I don't think you need any introduction, but I'm going to give you one.
Okay, I like that.
Major has spoken to our club here on a number of occasions. He's been the president of our club, and anybody who's been in the club for even a short amount of time knows all that Major does and how he helps out so many different people in the club. He's also spoken at the SFBA, San Mateo Beekeepers Association, Horticulture Club for Solano County. He's been beekeeping for 27 plus years, and he's been a mentor for over 20 years. He's going to be speaking to us today. As you can see, all his equipment up here on easy peasy queens, how to manage swarms, and how to make more honey. So, Major, without further ado, we appreciate having you, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. I'm hard of hearing, so when we get to the point where you're asking questions, I may have to have you repeat it. So, I tell you what I've done here tonight. I brought some equipment, and I want to show you how to eliminate a swarm, eliminate swarms, how to make a queen, easy peasy queen rearing, and how to make a lot of honey. Okay? And I think what I'll do is get into a lot of rearing, how to make a lot of honey. This gadget here is called a 2-queen colony. And what these boxes are, this is a deep, and this is a medium, which would be called a California hive. Okay? We don't need 2 deeps like they do back east because we have such a easy weather out here. So nice microclimates. So what happens here is you have a colony of bees. There's a queen in here with 50,000 bees, and then there's a queen in here with 50,000 bees. This colony right here, the entrance is in the back, and this one is in the front. That way the queens won't come around and kill each other. This way they have to enter in different locations. So what happens is all these bees are bringing in nectar, and they're going to go up here and put it in this one honey super. And the first thing you're going to say is, aren't they going to fight? They don't fight. They love each other. Bees from this colony over here that are bringing nectar in will try to sneak into this colony. These guys won't stop them. They'll say, thanks for bringing in nectar, even though you're a neighbor, we'll accept you. So there's no fighting going on. So basically what you've got here is 2 queens with a double amount of pheromone doing 1 box. So if everything goes well and you get an early start in the year, you could fill this box 3 times. That's 50 pounds of honey. That's a medium, let's say. You could do that 3 times. That's 150 pounds of honey. Honey sells for $10 a pound. 2-queen colony. This, I'm going to have to change this around. I forgot to bring a top box for this one. So what I'm going to do, well, actually I'll just explain it. I won't even go through that physical malarkey there. Here's your colony, your new colony you picked up April 1st. And normally what you do is once it gets built up, you add another box. Expand the colony. You don't have to do that. You can put a queen excluder here and put your honey super here. The bees are programmed to bring the honey up. So now you've collected honey on this 1 box. There's a drawback to that. You can do that. You can probably get 2 boxes out of the season. The drawback is they don't have any stores. The box up top, the second box, is called the stores. That's their honey for them to eat during the winter. So now you've made yourself 1, maybe 2 boxes of honey. That's 100 pounds. Now winter's rolling around. You got to figure out some way to keep these guys alive. You got to give them some sugar water, or maybe you have a dead colony that died and it's got a super with honey on it, so you can give them that super. This is kind of a cruel thing to say, but there are some people, some guys, some places where they do this and they just keep gathering honey and the bees die. They starve to death going into the winter. Okay, so the thinking is you're going to get 100 pounds of honey at $10 a pound. There's $1,000. Come spring, you can buy a package of bees for $100. So It's not that they hate the bees, it's just a financial adventure. So that's what I'm talking about, making a lot of honey, these two methods. If you want to prevent it, we're going to talk about preventing swarms. If you want to prevent swarms, my method, my theory is, and I like to share this with you, of course, is replace your queen every year. When I first got started 27 years ago, that's what we did. We took the queen out at the end of the season, we took the queen and we took her against a brand new queen in a little queen cage, and we smashed her against the queen cage, and introduced that queen cage into the colony, the existing colony. Now they've got a nice, fresh, strong queen. She's got a really good pheromone going, and she's going to be laying like crazy. Queens only last about a year. I mean, they live 4 years, maybe 5 years, but they're only good for a year. Commercial beekeepers replace the queen every year. If you have 1 or 2 colonies, you're a small-time beekeeper, a little hobby beekeeper, that's easy to do. In the last 10 or 15 years, it was really hard for me to do that because I'm running 30 colonies by myself. So this last year, just a couple months ago, I sold off almost everything. So now I'm back down to 5 colonies, and I don't want to get any more. It's just too physical. Vodka. So that's the trick to eliminating a swarm, in my book. Replace that queen every year. You can replace that queen in the spring, or you can replace that queen in the fall. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you how to make a queen. I'm going to have to do a little physical stuff here. Imagine this colony here has, no, actually I do want to change it. Ollie, you want to come up and help me do this? This is how I feed my bees. Hold this up in the air so they can see that hole. That's a feeding hole. Let's get this off of here. I'm going to set it and put this over here. There you go. Perfect. Good answer. Set that over. Okay, I'm going to show you how to make a queen. Pretty cool. You do this in the month of May or June. Okay? And the reason you do that in the month of May or June is that's when there's drones flying and the queen can get mated. So you go through your apiary and you find the strongest colony that you have. And so this one here is my strongest colony this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this colony. Let's not forget to feed them. I'm going to go into this colony and I'm going to find the queen. I'm going to take a queen cage, a little wooden queen cage, and I'm going to put her in this queen cage. Okay? I know you go, wow, I'm a new beekeeper, I can't do that. Well, see if I can explain some of the ways to do that. Then what you basically do is you take that queen out of this colony and you put her in your chest pocket. If you're 98 degrees, she likes to be about 98 degrees. She's not going to sting you. Okay? There are several ways to grab that queen. You can use these little plastic or metal queen catchers. They work really good. The problem with this that I'm not happy with, I bought this a million years ago, is how do you get the queen out of here? You know, that's the secret. So I devised a system where I would open this up in a certain way and throw her into my palm of my hand. And then while she's in the palm of my hand, I could take the queen cage with the cork missing and hold it just over the opening of my hand and she'll crawl in there. Okay. Kind of tricky, but it's kind of, you know, if you can pull this off, you feel pretty good about yourself. You go, gee, I'm one with the bees. You could try a marking tube. This is a marking tube for marking queens. Queens always like to move up in a container. They always move up. So if you pull the bottom up, she'll probably stay up there. Then I could put her in my hand and then put her in a queen cage and put her in my pocket. So now I got the queen in my pocket. This is a medium box. This is a 4-frame medium nuke. For you new kids, a nuke means nucleus, and it's what we have in our little tray. That's a 5-frame deep nuke. So what I do now is I take a frame of eggs and wet larvae out of here, and that will usually be right in the middle. Honey is always on the two outside places, place 1 and place 10. And then next to that normally is pollen, that would be place 2 and place 9. So what I'll do is I'll grab a frame out of the middle and I'll look at it very carefully. And if I have eggs and small wet larvae, I'm going to make a queen. So I put that in my little, I just pulled this out of here. I put this in my small 4-frame nuke. Then I pull out a frame of honey, and a frame of pollen, and if I want, I can pull out another frame of eggs and small wet larvae, and put in this nuke. And in 25 to 30 days, this little nuke will make a queen. Then I go down to the bottom box. Of course, I've got some empty places here, so I take some frames out of my stash of frames and put them back in here. Then I go down to the bottom box, which are deeps, and I do the same thing. I pull out some frames of eggs and small wet larvae, put it in this traditional 5-frame deep nuke, and some frames of honey, some frames of pollen, and maybe another frame. So now I'm trying to make 2 queens. So I'll find out in about 30 days if I've got a queen. So at that point, I will mark these queens, because I like to have marked queens. And I'll tell you why in a minute. This is a little marking device. You put the queen in here. This is very soft. You shove this up in here, you get it and hold it, and you take a marking pin and mark the queen. This year the marking is green in color, which is interesting. That color is international throughout the world. That's one way to mark a queen. This is an interesting one. Please don't, you can come and look at it, but please don't make it as glass. This came in from Europe. My good friend Ralph Carter got this for me several years ago, and I have a really old one from Europe sitting in my apiary. And the queen walks in here, you can put her up there, and then you can mark her. So this is for, look, I have to try not to touch it. If you dropped it and broke it, I'd have to kill you. And that would hurt. The best way to mark a queen, but you have to be young with a real steady hand, like myself. It's called marking the queen on the run. You got the marking pen, you got your frame sitting there. Oh, there she is, and you just hit marker. And don't get it in her eyes. So if you're young and you want to feel like a real beekeeper, practice doing that with drones. And then when you get to the point, you can do a queen. The third thing is to pick the queen up. And that's a real challenge for everybody. I pride myself in picking up queens. What you do is you take one finger real gently, push her in the back of her head, push her into the wax a little bit. Not hard, just enough to hold her. Then reach down with these thumb and forefinger, grab the wings on one side, and then with your other hand, thumb and forefinger, reach underneath her 3 legs, and thumb on top of the legs, let go of the wings. She won't be buttering around, and you can get your marking pen and mark her. And so when you mark her, what you do is you remove several frames, blow on it, give it about 60 seconds for the paint to dry, remove some frames, set it down to the bottom, okay? And then put your frames in real quickly. If you accidentally have the event that the queen flies off, don't panic. She'll circle, she'll line up with the sun, she'll come back. So leave your colony open. And then you can tick out and check your frames in an hour or two, or maybe the next day, and she'll be back in there. Anyway, that's the three things I want to emphasize. How to make a lot of honey, how to make some queens. What was the other one? How to stop swarming. This is an interesting little device. This is called an emery shell. How many people here got packages this year? Hands? Okay. And years before. So you get that queen in that little queen cage in your package of bees, and what they want you to do is separate these 10 frames of bees and 10 frames and insert this queen cage in between there. And everybody goes, I don't know where to put the screen, I don't know if to put this up, I don't know what, and it's kind of goofy, but I mean, you eventually do it. But here's what I do. I have an emery shell, I put it on top of my colony, I want to introduce the new queen. This is after shaking all the new bees in there. I put the queen cage right across a couple of frames. And in 5 days, I come back and remove the emery shell, lift this off the top of the frames, and easy peasy. I'm going to read a bunch of stuff now. So this is the hard part. You have to wait a little bit now while I am trying to figure out how to read. That looks familiar. Is that working? Well, you know how to do it.
Doing it with that right angle.
Well, mine's by the way, I'm tickled pink that some of my old buddies have showed up today. Robert McKinney came all the way in from San Francisco and had something to do. Robert is master beekeeper, a longtime friend of mine. Okay, I told you how to stop swarming, replace your queen. There's a little thing I call catch-22. The spring solstice is May the 15th. Okay, that's your first apple blossom. That's when you're going to have your first swarm at 11 o'clock in the afternoon. Now the catch-22 part comes in here. Queens are not available until the first week of April. So if you're got a marked queen in May, you don't need to purchase a new queen, because you know you had a marked queen and now it's an unmarked queen.
Right.
You know that she swarmed.
Major, take one step to your right. There you go.
Gotcha. Did you get that last part? The catch-22 is pretty interesting. May 15th, your colony's going to swarm, first apple blossom. And so that marked queen that you had from last year is not there anymore. You got a new queen, no mark. So that tells you got a swarm. So you don't have to buy a new queen if you were planning on buying a spring queen first week of April. Well, let's skip over there. I got a little information about queens. They're so interesting. Queens faint. You'll be working with a queen, you'll do something, she'll faint, make you think she died. She'll lay there, and you go, oh my gosh. You close up the colony, and you come back a couple hours later, and she's out there rooting around, doing her little slutty thing that she does. Queens don't stay in the colony all year. They come out, they might fly around, they might exit 4 or 5 times. They go do something, I don't know what it is, but it's been noted that they're not in there all the time, which is kind of interesting. A new queen will give you lots of honey that first year. That second year, if you don't replace her, your honey's going to dwindle. You're not going to get much honey. You're not going to get much production. I asked one of my buddies, I think it was Robert McKinney, one day a couple of years ago. I said, Robert, what's the most important thing you can tell me? And he says, the most important thing you can do is have a good queen. And it just kind of went, whoa. Why didn't I think of that before? Anyway, that's something to think about, having a really good queen. When you're in the colony and you're looking for the queen and you're smoking, she's going to go down. So if you've got 2 boxes, it doesn't make much sense to go through that top box looking for the queen if you've used a lot of smoke. I don't smoke the bees much at all. I'll tell you what I do. If I have a bunch of bees sitting on top of a bunch of frames, 10 frames, I just reach down and blow on them, and they'll drop right down. They disappear like you smoke them. I'm going to give you a couple of tips and tricks here. I think that's about all I can say about queens. Except they don't sting you, you know, if you're handling them. They can, but they won't. I'm going to grab a frame here. I hope I can grab a frame. Black frames, black foundation, that's so you can see the white eggs when you're looking for eggs. When you've got one of these frames out and you're looking for the, thanks Pete. When you're looking for the queen and you pull a frame out, this is the best way to hold it. Not like this, the same weighs 7 pounds. Hold it like this. You can roll it real gently and you can look on both sides. The queen always likes to travel to the dark side of something. If you're down here and there's a dark area, she'll move to the dark area. When you get new frames, there's some marking up here. The date is on here. Mark all 10 of your new frames with a Sharpie. That way, when you go to put them back in, after you've done this and handed it to Bobby McGee over here, and they hand it back, you put it in the box, all the spaces will be in the right place. Bridgecomb and Burcomb goes from one frame to another, and if you put it in backwards, then you're probably going to kill some bees or mush them around. I call it a lock when you put it in the right place. This Bridgecomb is called a lock. I don't know where I got that. Smoke the beekeeper, not the bees. Work your bees early in the day. Bees are nice and gentle early in the day. Ralph Carter and George like to get up about 4 o'clock in the morning. They have a shot of tequila and then they go work the bees and they're out there about 6 o'clock in the morning. I tried it with them a couple of times, but it's too early for me. You got propolis on your tools or something you want to get it off of? Rubbing alcohol removes propolis. I have a landing board that I stick into the front of the colony, and I have it supported with another bee box, a beekeeper super sitting there. And so when I'm doing this technique called brush and shake, that's how you get bees off of a frame. It's called brush and shake. Give them a good swift jaunt like that, and then you take your brush and brush off the other ones. So don't brush and shake your bees back into the colony. Don't brush and shake them on the ground. Brush and shake on a landing board so they go back into the colony from the entrance. That way, you're eliminating this crowding that's going on. Stop looking for the queen. If you have a really hard time, pull out a center frame. Not all. At first, you've got to work your way to the center frame. Pull out a center frame. If you see eggs, she's been there in the last 3 days. You know that your colony is queen right. You can look in the landing, and if the bees are bringing in pollen, that tells you that your colony is queen right. Just about all this stuff I'm telling you is for the new people. All you old timers know all this, and they're going, God, how boring. But anyway, this is for you new kids. When you house a swarm, you get your first swarm, and when there's a swarm sitting in your bush and you can get it easily enough, go up and spray it with just some clear water. It'll shrink up, and all the flying bees will stop flying. The number will start diminishing. So you're going to put this new swarm you've got in a box. You must have some drawn comb, okay? That will leave on you. And almost 70% of the time, a new swarm will leave if it's all brand new equipment. So get some drawn comb, something that'll make them feel like it's an existing house. These little tips and tricks are kind of bounce around, but it's okay. If you learn one thing from this little lecture, you're doing good. If you haven't learned one thing, I'll give you back your money. There's a mild disease called chalk brood. It doesn't happen very often. It looks like little pieces of chalk, and they're white or black, and they're laying on the landing board of your colony, and then they're on the ground. It's not a serious disease. I don't even know if it's called a disease. Maybe it's a virus. But years and years ago, we found a recipe for it, and I've never seen it anywhere else. You take a gallon of syrup, you add 1 teaspoon of bleach into your syrup. You feed the bees that gallon of syrup, and in a couple of days, the bees will change color from yellow to green. That tells you it's working. In the last 27 years, I think I've had chalk brood 3 times, so it's a real minor thing. In your house, when you're getting ready to do an extraction, I don't know if our club rents the extractors out. I know we have an extractor party, but do we rent them out? Yeah, the club rents them out. So let's say you've rented an extractor, and you're going to set up an extraction in your living room, or your bedroom, and you want to keep the ants out. What I do is I take about 3 sheets of newspaper and I spray regular ant spray on the newspaper, just on the outside, and I set that newspaper underneath my extractor, I set it underneath my decapping box, I set it underneath anything that's going to have honey on it. And after I'm done extracting, I just roll it up and throw it away. It acts like a poison moat, and that'll keep the ants out of there. And nothing worse than getting up at 6 in the morning in your underwear to go get a cup of coffee, and you walk past this extraction that you were doing last night, and there's a million ants. Oh, you can't imagine the curse words that'll come out of people's mouths. I've heard words of it. Oh, incredible. Bees hate pine sol, almond extract, pine bleach. They hate bleach, pine sol. Almond extract. And so if you have an area where bees keep going into a wall at your house and you have to keep removing them, or something similar to that, you can try those 3 things. That'll make them not want to come back. After a while, your smoker's going to get built up with this gummy tar residue, and the lid won't want to come off. The first time I ever had that happen, I was taking a hammer and a screwdriver, and I'm trying to get the lid off, and I practically destroyed this nice smoker. What you need to do is have a propane torch, heat the rim up on the lid, it'll just pop right open. Always start a smoker from the bottom. Okay? Each time you're ready to use your smoker, empty it out, put it in a pie pan, whatever's in there. Start off with some paper, egg carton ripped up, and start with a propane torch. And then once that's going, what I do is I put the eucalyptus chips in there. That's a nice mild smoke. And down the road here, I'll tell you another thing about eucalyptus chips. And then if I want to keep that smoker going for hours, I'll put some chunks of oak bark. Because when I'm running 30 colonies, I have to keep that smoker going a long time. New beekeepers, you don't need gloves. You can work without gloves, but if you don't want to chance it, put some butyl gloves on, those throwaway gloves. That's what I wear when I come up to a hot colony. One of the neatest things I do is I will drizzle honey on the top of the frames. I will blow on the bees, and they'll drop down, and I can drizzle some honey on the frames. And then all of a sudden, they all come up, and they line up shoulder to shoulder, like cattle, eating that honey. And it's amazing how fast they can eat a half a quart of honey. if you're dripping honey on top of one or two bees, don't worry about it. The bees next one will clean them real quickly. When building wooden frames, not many people do that anymore. I still do it, and I'm sure some of the other people do here. You got to use 10 nails. 4 on the top, 2 and 2. 4 on the bottom, 2 and 2. And 2 diagonal nails. That keeps that top from pulling up. There's nothing gonna keep those nails, those 4 nails on top, holding that top if the bottom is glued to another frame. So definitely put some diagonal nails in there. Best bit of advice I can give you. Somebody came over to my house yesterday with some frames, and we were taking them out of the boxes, and half the tops, not half, but about a third of the tops were loose and had come loose. I like to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of vinegar and just a couple drops of wintergreen to my syrup. Not much vinegar, but the bees like salt a lot. Vinegar changes their pH. A little wintergreen out here is good for knocking mites. Talking about knocking mites, here are some things you can add to your smoker which will knock the mites off of the bees, hopefully make the sign of the cross. Grapefruit leaves, creosote plant leaves, dried pomegranate skins, tobacco, eucalyptus chips. You use 1, 2, or all of it at once. And supposedly it'll knock mites off of bees. You know, if you're looking at your bees and you're looking for varroa mites, it's hard to see them because they're on the bottom of the bee and they're in the crevices of the bees. All colonies have mites. Anybody tells me they don't have mites in their colony, I'm gonna make a little laugh. You know, kind of look at that person funny. All colonies have wax moths. Wax moths do not kill colonies. Wax moths take over colonies that are weak and dying. I told you about mercury frames. That's a really good trick for a new frame. Here's some don'ts. Don't lay your super full of honey or full of bees flat onto an object. Lay something under the corner so it's propped up, or take your super and stand it on end. Okay, that's what I do if I don't have room. I'm really lucky. I have a bunch of metal tables that are about 14 inches off the ground, about 14 inches tall, and I can just set my frame right on there. It's hollow metal frames. And what's interesting is these little tables. I've got about 4 or 5 of them, I think. A frame will fit in there and rest in there. I could put 3 or 4 frames in these little tables. These metal tables were used to support concrete laundry trays in people's laundry room. I was a plumber for 35 years, and every once in a while you get one of these concrete laundry trays from the 50s and it's broken, and I have to go replace it, put a plastic on it. So I would take that metal table, take that home and use it with the bees. I like keeping a heavy fry pan on my little work area where I'm working. That way, if I'm doing something with this hand and I've got wax on a pine tool in this one, I can wipe it on the fry pan and it doesn't move around. Never throw your wax on the ground. Don't do that. You'll step on it, you'll walk it in the house, you'll step on your wife's white rug, and then you'll be hanging out with me someplace. And why did I do that? She just kicked me out. I don't understand. So always keep your wax. Wax has a value of about $6 a pound, and it sells for $9 a pound in the catalog. Always keep an extra queen excluder. Here's what happens. You go in and you remove a box and do something. The queen excluder is just full of wax, bridge comb, bird comb. So what you do is you grab that, set it aside, and put your clean one back in there. And then you take that one full of wax and you put it in your solar wax melter and let the sun melt the wax off of that solar wax melter. This is interesting. There's a thing called the brood ball. That usually encompasses those 2 colonies, a California colony. Usually half of it is down in the bottom, half of it is in the top box, and it moves up and down, it changes. And now you got a queen excluder and you want to collect some honey up here. If there's a 2-inch layer of honey above the brood ball, it acts like a queen excluder. You don't have to use a queen excluder. The problem is, if there's a delf, if there's a lack of nectar, no nectar flow, those bees will eat their way right through there. Then the queen will go up into your honey box. And there's nothing worse than thinking you're going to get 10 frames of honey, 50 pounds, and 3 or 4 frames in the middle of uproot in the middle. By the way, bees, queens, get stuck right below the 2 inches of honey. They don't go to the left or the right. They don't go up to the honey frames or the pollen frame. They'll stay in the middle. You can always be assured your queen is in the middle. 85% of the time. I have a great book called Weeds of the West. Great big thick book full of beautiful colored pictures of the weeds. I wanted to learn as many of the names of the weeds that we have in this area. There are 22 different thistles that we have in this area. There are 4 different star thistles that we have. Today, when I was driving here, I saw my first wild artichokes. And you see them everywhere, right? With that big purple flower on top. Well, they're blooming right now. Well, on your way home, or when you go to the grocery store tomorrow, if you see one of those someplace, stop and walk over and smell it. The stalk is sticky, so watch out and grab it. It is the most unique smell, floral smell of any thistle I've ever, or any plant I know of. That big purple wild thistle that we have growing here. Good one. You want to find a queen, you're having a hard time, you're a new beekeeper, and you've got 2 colonies. What you can do is go into colony A, grab a frame near the brood area, brush the bees off, set it over here, take another frame, identical one out of this colony, of the brood area, switch those 2, close up the colony, go have a cup of coffee, watch the news for a minute, and then come back, and that smell from that other queen that was just there will draw this queen up to that frame. And so if you're lucky, you can pull these frames up. Here's your queen wandering around in that frame. That's a cool trick. Mark my words. Bees only make wax when there's a nectar flow. So when you're feeding bees, that tricks them into thinking there's a nectar flow. When the bees emit wax, it comes out of the side of their body, out of I don't know what that gland is called, but there's a gland right next to that, I believe, it's called the spiracle. That's what they breathe through, the spiracle gland. And I'm a real nut about people spraying things with sugar water. You read it in every book you read, spray your bees with sugar water, don't do it. Can you imagine you're trying to breathe through this thing inside your body and somebody's spraying sugar water on that and you're covered in sugar water? It never felt right. So I can't even imagine why you would want to spray bees with sugar water. But it talks about it in a lot of books. On the top of all of my colonies, I have 1 or 2 bricks, red bricks. And there is a thing called a brick language. And if you have a bunch of colonies, 30 colonies, like I do, or did, you set these bricks a certain way, and it tells you what's going on. This one's queenless, this colony looks weak, this one's ready to be harvested, so forth and so on. You make up your own brick language. Okay? And you put the bricks on there to keep the possums out and the raccoons and whoever else is in there. All right, I told you about the 2-inch layer of honey. When you've rented an extractor or you bought your first extractor, extract for a long time. I extract for sometimes an hour and 20 minutes. I get every last drop of honey out of there. If I'm going to go through the process of setting up an extractor, bringing the honey supers in, and then the cleanup, get every last drop of honey. And then when I go with my frames, I don't give my bees those frames to clean up. All the bees do, there's so little honey left if you do it my way, all they're doing is chewing up that wax. Okay, so what I do, I have some top-loading freezers, a couple of them, and got them set to the lowest point. I put my frames in there. My wet frames, it's called, the ones I've extracted. So when I'm getting ready to use that frame again, all the bees have to do is go fill that up and cap it. And you can produce multiple harvests by doing that. It's a shame when people scrape the wax and the honey off and then try to squeeze it through a piece of cloth. You've lost all that wax that the bees have made. Bees have to eat 5 pounds of nectar to make 1 pound of wax. A new swarm and a new package, they don't have guard bees yet. Guard bees are part of the house bees. There are 2 kinds of bees, field bees and house bees. So, and it's a caste system. And as they get a little older, they move up to different jobs. So there's no guard bees. So what you want to do is reduce the entrance. Make the entrance small so that the yellow jackets can't go in there and do anything crazy. Or the other bees can't get in there and rob that colony. I'll get back to this. There's a thing that I discovered, I don't know, years ago. When you got 30 colonies, you're not into the colonies all the time. So when I go to remove an inner cover, which can be called a crown board, that's the second name for an inner cover. When I go to remove that, and I'm looking at one, it's full of bridge comb, it's dripping with honey. Well, instead of sitting there and bees are trying to eat that honey, instead of scraping them off and killing bees and making a mess of honey and wax, just put 4 blocks of wood on all 4 corners and walk away, go do something else, work on another colony, finish mowing the lawn, and in about 15 or 20 minutes, all the bees will come up and eat that honey, and then they'll just leave you the wax. There won't be any robbing. There's so many bees up there that anybody else that thinks they're going to start a robbing scenario realizes that, no, I can't do that. There's a lot of bees that will fight me off. So don't scrape that stuff off when it's wet and full of bees. You're going to kill bees, and it's just a mess. I think Ralph and I discovered that years ago. Is that you? Yeah. Because we were killing bees like crazy. This is interesting. Bees don't fly in the colony. I mean, it's so simple. You never think about it until you stop to think about it. They can't fly in there. It's pitch black. They walk around. They walk everybody. And they've got to get from the one frame to the other. There's 3/8 of an inch of distance there. So what do? They pump out some wax and build a bridge. So that's what the bridge comb is all about. It's also called bird comb. A newly housed swarm put into a nuke or a 1-box colony, you just got in a swarm, they'll stay in that box for about 3 days. I mean, some of them will come out, but the majority of them stay in there. And I'm not sure what they're doing. I guess they're cleaning up and just talking to each other. And but it's interesting. You can still, in about 1 or 2 or 3 days after you pick a swarm, you can open it up and go in there and pull those frames out without any gear on, without a veil on, no gloves. Pete and I, and Ollie, Ralph, George, we have pulled lots and lots of swarms out of trees and bushes. And we normally go out without any gear on at all. In fact, we're thinking about going out naked next time. Just to prove that they won't harm you. You think that's a good idea?
Yes.
I think so. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, we want video.
No, we're going to do it. Let me show you something. Yellow jacket trap. When you get a minute, come up and look at this. It works really good. It's just water, no poison, a little meat hanging. That's some salami there. Yellow jackets fly like this. And when they smell that salami, they'll fly in there, and as they hit the water just grabs them. And on a good afternoon, here's where the water line is, and there's 2 holes in here. On a good afternoon, you can have 20, 30 yellow jackets in there. This is funny. I want to show hands. How many people do not know why this is shaped like this? Just out of curiosity. Honestly, come on. Okay, good. Here's why. My uncle from back east, 42 years ago, Uncle Pasquale, he invented this bee escape. It's a plastic bee escape. And what happens is, it fits into these holes. It snaps in there. And what you do is when you want to harvest a super of honey, you pick the super of honey up. This is the normally on the top. You pick that super of honey up with this bee escape and you set it underneath your honey. Inside of this little device are 2 springs, kind of soft metal springs, and they're shaped like this on both ends. And the bees are going to go down from the honey down to the queen and keep her warm that night. Well, what happens, 1 or 2 of these bees will get stuck in these metal frames. They have to push these frames to get through them. It gets stuck. And so now there's a panic going on, and another bee gets stuck. So what happens is you go to harvest your honey the next day thinking that all the bees are down with the queen. They went through this $4 little plastic device, and they're all up there. They're stuck in the honey super. And what are they going to do? They can't get to the queen. They're panicking. They eat all the honey. Not all. They eat half the honey. They're sitting there, rolling on their backs. Their bellies are all swollen up. They're belching and farting, and half your honey is eaten. It's a nightmare. It's all because of my uncle who invented this damn thing. So, that's a true story, by the way. Now, you know what this is for, right? Yeah. You got that hive tool, and you're trying to get it into those 2 colonies. It's hard. That damn colony is glued together with propolis. This is what this is for. You start beating on that hive tool a little bit, you get your second hive tool and beat it in between those frames, and you can pry that box loose, and God's in it. Turkey feathers. Great way to knock bees off your frames. You don't have to spend $8 for a bee brush. You can go grab your local turkey in the neighborhood, rip one of these out of its ass, and we can knock those bees off. Here's a bunch of corks, wine corks. I spent a little time putting these together for the brand new people that the new beekeepers. These corks are for putting in your smoker, in the mouth of your smoker. You lay it on its side and it'll shut down in about 5 minutes. So that's how you shut off your smoker. I'm gonna give these two cute girls up front, and they're gonna hand these out. Whoever puts their hand up gets one. You want to be a volunteer? Want to be a volunteer? You don't? So you brought me one. Record. Why do you have what? So you can see them when they fall on the ground. This is a swarm bucket. When you go to get your first swarm, do not take a wooden nuke. with tin frames in it. Do not take a tin frame or 8-frame box and carry it to a storm location. Get yourself a bucket. There's 1,000 holes drilled in this thing for ventilation. The top is full of ventilation. Put some branches in here, put your swarm in here, the bees will hold on to the branches, you can take it home and then dump it in your your new box, your new colony. The silliest thing I've ever done, when I first got started, I was trying to carry a box up the side of a tree. What the hell was I thinking? The best thing besides a bucket is a cardboard box. You take your pocket knife and just jam a bunch of holes in it for ventilation. You can suffocate a 3 to 4, 5 pound pile of bees in about an hour on a warm day if you don't have enough ventilation in there. This is an entrance hole for bees to come in when I have a queen in here that I pull out of a bush and she's in a bundle of, in a cluster of bees. You just set this on the ground and the bees will start wiggling their way in here to get to the queen. When I travel, I normally don't even plug the hole. I just put this bucket in there, and there might be 20 bees rooting around out here, and they'll hold on to the outside of the bucket. These are called Boardman feeders. This is an old antique one. This is a new modern one. I talk to a lot of people, or I listen to a lot of people, and everybody says, oh, don't use those. These are feeders for the front of your colony. Don't use those, they cause robbing. I've never seen robbing using these. I feed from the top, by the way, but if you've got some of these and you want to try them, I don't believe they're going to hurt anything. So let's say you put this in the entrance of your colony. You got this big opening. You might want to just put a block of wood there so that you can reduce the opening. All depends what the weather's like. If it's a smoking hot day like it was the other day, you want to open up your colony in the front as much as you can. During that hot day, you want to open the entrance up, and you want to go to the back of the colony, and you want to shove either a box or a crown board or an inner cover forward so you get a little ventilation drifting through there so that they're not bearding. Bees beard because they're hot, and this is cool. They also beard because there's a delft, there's no nectar. They've got nothing to do. So those are the two reasons. They're hot and they're crowded. But if there's no nectar, you got 50,000 bees, they got nothing to do. They're just going to hang around up front and do whatever they do. I think that's it. That's all I got for you.
Thank you, Major.
All right.
Are you open to some questions?
I'm open for questions, but you're going to have to speak loud and clear because I'm deep. I lost my hearing in the Army in 1963. Go ahead.
For those of you who have questions, please wait for the mic so everybody can hear the question.
Yeah.
What if you have a loud voice?
Yeah, Major. With the nukes, when you're doing your queens,
When you're raising a queen.
approximately how many nurse bees do you want in there?
Thank you. I missed that part. I
Yeah.
didn't miss that part. You want to shake a lot of bees in there. You've got the queen in your pocket. Oh, I forgot to return that queen back to the mother colony. She's still there. See what happened? You want to shake a lot of bees in there. Here's what happens. The field bees fly back to the mother colony. So now you only have house bees. So you want to keep as many house bees as you can in there. So when that queen cell gets built, or those multiple queen cells get built, and they start wanting to build a queen, they can keep that warm. And they can also keep that brood warm. Because normally, when you've got eggs and wet larvae and you're putting in that nuke, you've got a bunch of brood. Never separate brood. If you pull some brood out of a mother colony, shove the brood back together so it's all in one place. Good question. I missed that, and there was probably some other stuff I missed, but if you don't like it, I'll give you back your money. That's all there is to it.
Two questions.
Yes.
Okay, so cleaning my hive tools and my queen excluder's a pain.
Yes.
I just put them in my barbecue and cook the stuff off it. Is that bad?
It tastes terrible. No, that's not bad. I don't know. I just think you could do the same thing with torch.
Right, okay. That was question number one. Question number two, I've never heard of putting fragrant, burnable material in your smoker. So grapefruit leaves,
Yes.
do they have to be dry or can you use green ones?
Yeah, dry. Yeah, you don't want to put wet stuff in there. Yeah, dry. Creosote leaves, pomegranate skins, creosote, tobacco, eucalyptus. I tried this one time with tobacco and it wasn't good. It didn't kill the bees, but you could tell they were unhappy. They didn't like that. Yeah. I tried marijuana and I felt great. Any other questions? Not much of a chance.
Major, out of all your tips and tricks, what's the one that you hold dear, most dearest?
Oh God, I really like that part where you're just blowing on the bees and they all drop down. Just give them, it doesn't take much. And in fact, if you're going to use a smoker, it doesn't take much smoke at all. And I think I mentioned smoke the beekeeper, not the bees. I always get a smoker going, every time, and sometimes I never use it, but at least I got it if I need it. I like the idea of just kind of putting your bad breath on those bees and they move away. That's why nobody will kiss me anymore.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
What is the purpose of this?
Hold on.
Why do you need a smoker? What does a
The smoker herds the bees. You can herd them. You can get them to move away from what you want to do. Sometimes it will change their attitude. You get pissy bees, you almost have to use a smoker. If you get too pissy bees, if they're too aggressive, the first rule of thumb is to replace the queen. But Ralph and George and I have realized that's not a good idea. So we came up with a different approach. We had bees that would attack us 100 feet away from the colony. And you get up to them, you open it up, and they just come boiling out after you. They weren't Africanized bees. They were just a pissy colony, and it doesn't happen often. So what we did was we killed that colony. And we were trying to figure out how to do it. Chauncey Clark came up with the idea of taking a CO2 fire extinguisher, which is ice, and we froze them. We popped the top, hit them with the CO2, put it in the entrance and froze them. And then that way, the next day we can just dump them on the ground. The colony's still clean. And then we replace it with another colony. But basically the smoker's used for herding bees. Just move them around. When I go to pick up a swarm, I always speed things up by herding bees into a box that's sitting on a driveway or something. David?
Yes.
David Icor, one of my oldest buddies. He's been doing bees before I was born.
That just says I'm really old.
We all.
Couple things. I use a burlap still for a smoker. How do you like that?
A burlap in your smoker?
Yeah.
I'm against it. Totally against it. There's chemicals in there you don't want to know about. There's nylon in there that you don't see. Totally against it. I'll tell you what you do with that burlap. I don't care for that cotton that they sell either. It smells like, I hate to say what it smells like, but it smells terrible, that cotton stuff. My best, don't use pine and call them needles or pine chips. Use eucalyptus if you can get it. Or acacia. Acacia looks pretty good. You take a 1-inch block of wood about this long, okay, 1 by 1, and you take an eye screw, that's a screw with a circle on top of it, and you attach this 1-inch block of wood to this lid. Now there's a circle up here you can tie a rope to. So what you do is you take that burlap and you wrap this around twice, and then you dip this, or whichever way you can paint it on, wax and propolis and queen lure. The queen lures that they sell, there's a dozen of them out there. You hang this up in a tree, you can throw a rope over a big branch just there, hang this in a tree, do 2 or 3 of them, do one in the north, east, south, west corner of your property. This is called a Russian skyline. It's a swarm trap. The swarm will surround this block of wood covered in burlap, and you can go lower that down, you can put it in the bucket if you want, or you can just walk over because it's so nice and light, you just hold this lid and you can shake it into a colony. So, great, inexpensive way to make a swarm trap. Okay. David, go.
Last one was the pine needles. You don't like that. Randy Oliver recommends pine needles. I've used them, they look good.
Randy Oliver recommended burlap?
Pine needles.
Oh, pine needles?
Yeah, go to any place that they're gathered on the road and pick up.
He's having trouble with this esophagus.
Yeah, but I'm more worried about the esophagus of the bees, and if you can't tell.
Pine is so strong, it's impossible to inhale. You get a whiff of that. Eucalyptus is just the opposite. It's such a sweet smell, and also it seems to knock mites a little bit.
Okay.
One quick question is that we're talking about swarm, and whenever there's a swarm, we gotta move fast to get to the swarm. But when we arrive and the swarm is about to start to take off, do you have a trick to stop them?
There's a thing called, it's not drumming, there's a name for it. Drumming, maybe it is called drumming. Get 2 pans and make a rhythm. Bong, bong, bong. One of those ceramic planter bottoms that makes great sound. Take a hammer, a wooden piece of stick, and do that. I have actually done this and dropped a swarm 15 feet away from where it went. It went into a plum tree right in the neighbor's yard. And I've done it and it doesn't work. It didn't work. But it worked for me one time. I felt it did. So, anybody else ever had that experience?
I use just a regular kitchen saucepan with a handle and with a wooden spoon. Bang, 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 bang. And I down the swarm like that.
What happens, the bees think it's thunder and they want to land. That was Sun Lee that asked that question. Sun Lee is a master beekeeper and came all the way in from Daly City. Close to Daly City. He can't mention the town he's from there.
Randy Oliver uses weathered pine needles, not green ones. And the other question I have for you is, what do you do when you find swarm cells in your colonies?
I make the sign of the cross. That's money about to happen. There's old beekeepers that used to go in and knock swarm cells out. What a waste of energy. When a colony's going to swarm, it's going to swarm. You can take the swarm cells out and come back a week later and they're right back there. When bees set their mind they're going to swarm, they're going to do it. But I mean, a lot of guys will take swarm cells and they will remove them. And they will put them on a wax foundation inside of a wooden frame. Or they will take that whole frame and set that in a nuke and start a colony, of course with some other frames. But I don't mess around with my colonies too much. I concentrate on making honey up top and seeing if I can keep them alive. By the way, I haven't mentioned this. There's 2 kinds of honey. There's liquid honey that you extract, and there's comb honey. I'm a master of comb honey. I've been doing comb honey for 25 years. So if anybody ever wants to know anything about comb honey, come ask me. I'll charge you, of course.
Major, you said to leave the wax on the frames so they can be used again in the future.
Yeah, that's it.
So my question is, I was going to use that as a source for new frames that I buy, melt it down and do that. But what do you suggest to as a source for new frames when you want to add some honey?
Well,
Not honey, I'm sorry, wax.
well, you don't mind scraping it down, and you're going to save the wax, okay? And then melt it down and roll it out and make some foundation. Is that what you want to do?
I want to, when I'm making my new frames,
Yeah.
and they're brand new.
Oh, you want to paint it on there?
Right.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. A frame with drawn comb, a wet frame, a frame that has been decapped and extracted, has a value of $10. That was a $3 frame that you bought. It now moves up to $10. Okay? And the reason it moves up to $10 is because all the bees have to do is bring some nectar in, fan it till they get to the 17% moisture they want, and cap it. They can positively give you 2 harvests a year. What you're going to do, if you do that to your whole box, you've reduced it down to 1 harvest a year. It's cheaper just to go to some old fart like me that has hundreds of pounds of honey laying around. But painting your frames with honey is a good idea.
With wax.
Yeah, with wax, yeah. And paint with honey too, what the hell. Well, what do you got to lose?
So I'm going to be taking my medium honey super off and going to the honey extraction party this weekend. I've never done it before. What's a good way to get all the bees out of there?
Okay, here's what I do. I have these things called a bee escape. There are triangular bee escapes, and there are ones with a canal with cones. Cones that the bees walk out of these little cones. Looks like the top of a mustard jar. And there's cones on both sides, and they walk out of there, and they can't get back in. So what you do is you take your honey super, and you slide a bee escape underneath there, and then drop it back down, and come back in 2 days, and the bees will all be down to the bottom, at least 99% of them will. Then you can run in the house with your honey super. There's something you want to keep in mind though. Let's say you got a really strong colony, and you've had a great early harvest. You got a nice super full of honey. Well, what you need to do when you do that bee escape trick, okay, is slide an empty box with frames in it underneath there so that all those bees can go into that empty box and also down to the queen. Because if you don't put a box down there, you're going to take all those bees, you're going to crowd the brood chamber. So the second box is a must. Okay. Bee escape is the way I've always done. Not always, but I've done it for a million years. And it's better than brush and shake. Brush and shake is so hard on your back. And plus it just irritates the crap out of the bees. By the time you get to your 6th frame, the bees are all going crazy. They want to kill you.
Hey Major, what do you do with crystallized honey in the frames?
You put the crystallized honey underneath, right on top of the bottom board, underneath your brood chamber. And they will slowly bring that up. Bees always bring honey up, bees always move up, queens always move up. The only problem with that is the bees have to bring in a lot of water to break that crystallized honey down. Okay? And if that's too much of a problem, then scrape it off, and melt it down. And when you do that, and you've got a large container full of honey and wax mixed together that you've scraped off, warm that up really good somehow. I'm not going to tell you how you do it, but warm it up somehow, and then it'll separate. The wax will be on top, the honey will be on the bottom. Put that in the freezer. Come back the next day, and that circle, that flying saucer of wax will lift off. There's some tricks to get it to lift off nicely. And then you can take that circle, that flying saucer of wax, turn it over, set it on top of a colony. The bees will come and clean it up, and now you've got this big block of wax. And you put that in the solar wax melter. Am I clear? Was I clear with that? Yeah. I know I was. I meant to do that.
Hey, Major, how do you feel about a honey super warmer?
What?
Honey super warmer.
How do I keep who warm?
So, Layson has a honey super warmer. Have you ever used one of those?
Oh, mason bees?
Layson.
Oh, Layson.
Yeah, they have a honey super warmer where you put the honey super on top of it and it warms it. Have you ever used one of
I
those?
would love to own one of those. That'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be cool. But Layson makes good stuff, but it's expensive. You know, yeah. Yeah. Layson's a good company when you look it up. They make great stuff.
If you got crystallized honey, you can actually put it inside your car when it gets really warm, and that will take care of the problem.
You can also put it on a hot summer day, put an empty glass fish tank over it in your driveway. That fish tank will just hold all that heat in there.
It's a little safer in your car. Nobody's gonna steal it.
Don't put your pet turtle in.
And also for the gentleman that wanted wax for his frames, when I scrape off the wax before I extract the honey, I keep all that wax. Also, I keep all the burr comb, and I'll melt that down, refine it, and then I'll use that to roll it onto the new foundation.
I'll tell you another little trick I got on that line. Crown board, inner cover. Let's say you just harvested 1 or 2 supers of honey, and you got this bucket of cappings. Okay, you got the honey over here, and then you got this cappings, and you let the cappings drip until most of the honey is dripped off, and then you got this wet wax with honey. Well, lift your lid up and go up here and put a bunch of this up in here. Okay, the cappings, and the bees will come up through this hole and just eat all that honey and leave you the clean wax. A lot of guys and gals get tired of lifting 90 pounds. That's what a deep weighs when it's full, 90 pounds. And, so what they do is they say, I'm going to switch over to mediums, nothing but mediums. So what I suggest you do in that case is you run that deep through a table saw and rip that deep down to a medium. Now you've got a medium and you've got this shim that's 3 inches tall. Well, what I do is I'll drill holes, maybe 8 holes in this shim, and I'll staple some screen on the inside. It's called a vintage super. I think it should be called a vintage shim. Now I can put that on top of my inner cover, my crown board, and fill that with cappings. And they'll go up there and clean that. There's a lot of room at 3 inches. You put a lot of wet wax up there. And you've utilized that shim there. Yes?
How do you store your supers to keep critters out of it? Wax moth and whatnot? How do you store your frames?
Good question. I store supers that are half filled on the colony during the winter. And here's what I do. I got a half-filled super. I take my inner cover and I shove it underneath that half-filled super. Now what that does is that keeps the warmth of the colony on there so I don't get the wax moth. It's a strong colony, it's killing the wax moths. Okay? And the bees can sneak up there on a good sunny day and eat some honey. Now my drawn comb, the wet frames, the ones that I've extracted for an hour and a half, I put those in a freezer. I have a top-loading freezer. I can put 100 frames, medium frames, in that freezer. That is 11 colonies worth of supers. Because I only use 9 frames in my honey supers. And I keep that freezer set down low to the lowest temperature.
Do you use 10 frames in your colony?
I use 10 frames in the colony.
And 9?
I only use 9 after my first extraction. You always use 10 frames on your first year in your honey super that you're going to make honey. Use 10 frames. After that, after you've taken them out and decapped them and extracted the honey, then you can put 9 frames in. The first year that you go to uncap that honey, you're going to have to use a fork. one of those forks for scraping the capping, because it's not stuck out enough for you to run a hot knife. So you have to scrape it off by hand. Very tedious, but it's okay. It's your first harvest. You're so excited you don't get to learn about anything. And then after that, you get 9 frames. And so what happens is your frames build out real fat. And then you can hit it with your hot knife and go crazy, like you're on a speedway or something. Some guys I've heard, I've never done it, use 8 frames, and that would make it really thick. I like using plastic frames, all plastic frames for my honey boxes, the ones I'm going to collect honey in. They're cheap, they're wax moth resistant, they work just fine. Okay. I do not like using large, deep plastic frames. The bees don't want to build like they're supposed to. They don't want to build wax and comb on there. They kind of want to go the opposite direction. They make layers for some reason on the deeps. I don't understand it. So now there's a holiday between this comb and the plastic frame. And the first thing you want to do is tear it off and rebuild it, you know. So, but I've learned over the years, just let them do it. Bees will be bees. Let them do what they want to do. You know, same thing with beekeepers.
Yeah, do you have any suggestions for controlling ants?
My best suggestion for controlling ants has worked for years. I have 4 legs in all of my stands. I have tables, 1 foot off the ground. I designed and built a really neat stand. It's called a 1, 2, 3 stand. It's 1 foot tall, 2 foot deep, 3 feet wide. It holds 2 colonies, and it has 2x4s for legs. I put them in some stainless steel dog water bowls or some strong glass bowls. I fill that with dirt to the top, and I put dirty motor oil on the top of that dirt. The bees can land on that if they want and fly off again. Ants will not cross that dirty motor oil. It's so acidic, they won't do it. And so I have to re-oil those legs, those little ant bowls. I have to re-oil those maybe 4 times a year. Okay? Don't use vegetable oil. You gotta use motor oil. Vegetable oil goes rancid and just not a good idea. How we doing? Anybody want their money back yet?
Thank you.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Major, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And just for a moment here, I'd like to hold Norm Watt in our thoughts.